He spent half a month traveling with his first love. He finally remembered that he had a wife who had just given birth. He held roses that symbolized perfunctory affection, pretending to be travel-worn as he hurried home. But the nanny who opened the door looked terrified. In a trembling voice, she told him, "Sir, the madam moved out with a baby 13 days ago." The smile on his face froze. I folded a few pairs of tiny socks and placed them in the corner of the suitcase. Maria stood by the door, her hands gripping the edge of her apron tightly. "Madam, it's very cold outside. The baby was just born not long ago," Maria said in a low voice. I picked up the bottle on the table, tightened the cap, and put it into the insulated bag. "Maria, you've seen with your own eyes how I've struggled alone these 13 days. I have to leave." I walked to the dressing room. Arthur's half of the closet had suits hanging neatly, and his watches were in the glass cabinet. I didn't even touch them. I only took the things for me and the baby. 2 suitcases and a diaper bag. That was all my luggage. This afternoon, my phone screen lit up. It was a notification from the door security camera. I opened the video. Arthur stood at the front door. He held a bouquet of red roses. The edges of the petals were a bit blackened, obviously bought on the fly at a roadside gas station. He was sweating profusely, his clothes wrinkled. He inserted the key into the lock and pushed the door open. His voice came through the video. "Eleanor, I'm back. Sorry, the flight was delayed." Maria came out of the kitchen. She wiped her hands on her apron. "Sir," Maria said, her voice trembling. Arthur tossed the roses onto the entryway table and looked around. "Where's the baby? Is she sleeping?" Maria stepped back. "The madam moved out with a baby 13 days ago." In the surveillance footage, the smile on Arthur's face froze. He stared at Maria, his mouth slightly open. He reached up and tugged at his tie. He stood there for a full minute without saying anything. Then, he rushed upstairs. 5 minutes later, he ran back down, phone in hand. He walked to the sofa and plopped down. He propped his legs on the coffee table and tapped the screen a few times. "Eleanor, stop messing around. I know you're watching the surveillance," Arthur shouted into the air. Maria walked over with a glass of water and placed it on the coffee table. "Sir," when the madam left, she left all the access cards behind. She also took all of the baby's toys. Arthur picked up the glass and took a big gulp. Water dripped from his chin onto his shirt collar. He slammed the glass down on the coffee table. The glass made a loud clinking sound.
My phone rang.
Arthur's name flashed on the screen. I pressed the answer button, turned on the speakerphone, and placed the phone on the table. I looked down to change the baby's diaper. "What the hell are you doing?" Arthur's voice burst out of the speaker, very loud. I wiped the baby's little legs clean with a wet wipe. I moved out. "What kind of move is it to take the child? Are you trying to force me to back down?" "Fine, I'm sorry, I've been too busy with work. You come back right now." He was breathing heavily on the other end. I threw the dirty diaper into the trash can. "I'm not coming back. The divorce papers will be sent to your office next week." There was silence on the phone for a few seconds. Then came a cold laugh. "Eleanor, don't play this boring game. You think I don't know? You've seen my credit card bills, right? Fine, I admit it, I was with Chloe these past 2 weeks. She just came back to the country and was feeling down, so I accompanied her to relax. You want a divorce over such a small thing?" I pulled out a clean tissue and dried my hands. "I told you, I'm not coming back."
Fine.
"Don't regret it." Arthur's voice rose. "Since you've vacated the place, I'll have Chloe move in tonight. Let's see how long you can hold out. Without me, you can't even afford next month's rent." I directly pressed the red end button. I turned the phone face down on the table. The room was filled only with the baby's soft breathing. I sat on the sofa and opened my laptop. The screen light shone on my face. Arthur had no idea how much time and effort it took to maintain the glamorous life under his name. I opened my email. The first email was from Hawthorne Country Club. The manager asked me if I still needed to order that batch of French red wine for Mr. Arthur's annual golf invitational next month. I typed a line in reply. "Cancel all reservations. Mr. Arthur will be handled by someone else from now on." The second email was from the chair of the Homeowners Association in the upscale Oak Ridge community. She reminded me that donations for the community charity dinner were due next week and that it was our family's turn to decorate the community entrance for Halloween. I replied briefly, as before, "I have moved out of the community. Please contact Mr. Arthur directly." I continued scrolling. Two of Arthur's major clients' wives had texted to ask if I wanted to join them for afternoon tea tomorrow. I replied, "I'm not feeling well and regretfully cannot make it." Arthur had an impressive sales record. He could close deals over drinks, believing it was his personal charm that won people over. He had no idea that every month I sent his clients' wives their favorite limited edition perfumes, accompanied them to galleries to buy paintings, and wrote recommendation letters for their children's private school applications. The clients were willing to sign off on deals because of the relationships I had carefully nurtured behind the scenes. One by one, I severed all these social ties. Next, I logged into the community HOA's online system using the administrator password. I removed my name from the position of co-chair of the community annual dinner, canceled the auto-renewal for the landscaping service, and terminated the weekly premium housekeeping appointments. After finishing these tasks, I picked up my glass and took a sip of water. It was warm and soothing as it flowed down my throat. Arthur grew up in a modest family and had no understanding of the unwritten rules of affluent neighborhoods. He thought that as long as his bank account was full, people would smile at him. He didn't know that when the HOA chair complained about leaves not being cleared from the roadside last week, I spent an entire afternoon apologizing. He had no idea that to secure 2 invitations to a top-tier art exhibition, I sat with a client's wife in a salon for 5 hours. Now, I was stepping back. I wanted to see how he and his Chloe would survive in this world. I placed the baby in her crib. She was full and blowing little bubbles. I drew the curtains to block the harsh sunlight outside. The rented apartment had only 2 rooms and a tiny kitchen. I walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, and washed the baby bottle. The sound of running water filled the room. I dried my hands with a towel and sat down at the dining table, where my laptop sat with the screen still on. I opened the public forum page for the Oak Ridge community. Even though I had resigned from my position, the system still sent daily community notifications to my backup email. I picked up the mug beside me and took a sip of cold water. The first post on the forum featured a high-resolution photo. In it, Arthur's black Porsche was parked on the lawn, its wheels crushing the edge of an automatic sprinkler head. The car door was wide open, and several movers in uniforms were carrying a massive pink velvet sofa into the house. The poster was Helen, the HOA chair, who lived directly across from Arthur's house. Below the post was a line of bold red text, "Severe violation. Commercial vehicle entered the community on Sunday morning, damaged public landscaping, and replaced large furniture without approval." I stared at the screen for a moment. Arthur had moved quickly. He had really brought Chloe in. I tapped the keyboard to zoom in on the photo. Chloe was standing in the driveway in a tight tank top and large sunglasses, directing the movers with a glass of champagne in hand. She gestured toward the 2 rows of white hydrangeas I had planted by the entrance, waving for the workers to remove them. 2 workers immediately grabbed shovels and began digging up the hydrangeas, splattering dirt onto the white driveway. I leaned back in my chair. Those hydrangeas were an extremely rare variety. The community's landscaping committee had held 3 meetings before approving their planting, with strict regulations on height, color, and blooming cycles. Half an hour later, my phone vibrated. A text message from Helen appeared on the screen. "Eleanor, what's going on at your house? Who is that woman in the tank top? She had your flowers dug up and replaced them with 2 giant plastic flamingos. This completely violates Section 5 of the Community Landscape Bylaws." I picked up my phone and typed slowly, "Helen, I'm sorry. I've moved out. The house is now entirely Arthur's responsibility. I have no authority to intervene." After sending the text, I set my phone to silent and tossed it onto the table. I walked to the crib and tucked the baby in with a small blanket. At 2 in the afternoon, a video was posted on the forum. The footage was shaky. Helen stood in Arthur's driveway, holding her phone. Arthur emerged from the house in a slightly disheveled shirt, his hair messy. Chloe hid behind him. Mrs. Helen. Just a minor adjustment. Arthur had his hands in his pockets, wearing his trademark salesman smile. Chloe likes bright, colorful things. Those two flamingos are quite cute, aren't they? Helen stood stiffly, holding a black clipboard. Mr. Arthur. Oak Ridge Community strictly prohibits any unnatural landscape decorations not approved by the Environmental Committee. Also, no major construction on Sundays. Your workers' truck leaked oil and stained the community driveway. All of these incur fines. The smile on Arthur's face froze for a moment. He frowned and glanced back at the truck. All right, how much is the fine? Arthur pulled a checkbook and a pen from his pocket. He uncapped the pen and quickly wrote on the check. Is $500 enough? Consider it a donation to the community's weeding fund. He handed the check to Helen. Helen didn't take it. She crossed her arms over her chest. According to regulations, unauthorized landscape alterations carry an initial fine of $1,000. If not restored, an additional $200 per day. Additionally, you need to pay for deep cleaning of the driveway. Most importantly, you must submit a written rectification report. Arthur's hand holding the check hung in midair. He took a deep breath and stuffed the checkbook back into his pocket. Mrs. Helen, we live in this upscale neighborhood, and everyone is quite busy. How about this? I'll write a check for $2,000. You can hire someone to clean the driveway. As for those flowers, they're already pulled out. Chloe likes the flamingos, so let them stay. Surely you can do me this favor? Arthur's tone hardened. He believed money could solve everything. Helen looked at him coldly. The Homeowners Association will hold a hearing on Wednesday evening. Please attend on time. She turned and walked away. The video ended there. I picked up my mug again and finished the remaining water. Arthur had no idea how much trouble he had stirred up. Helen's husband was a federal judge. Helen herself treated the entire community as her personal domain. She hated nothing more than people trying to throw money at her. That evening, Arthur called me. I watched his name flash on the screen. The first time, I didn't answer. The second time, I pressed the answer button. Eleanor. Arthur's voice sounded weary. What did you say to that old woman on the Homeowners Association? She came to give me trouble this afternoon. I hung a freshly washed baby outfit on the drying rack as I replied, I didn't say anything. I already told you I moved out. Community matters are your responsibility now. Don't play dumb, Arthur shouted on the other end of the line. I never had to deal with this nonsense before. You must have put her up to it. Chloe just moved in and wanted to decorate her home. You women are so petty. I clipped a little pink dress into place. The Homeowners Association has clear rules. All landscape modifications must be applied for 3 months in advance. Did you pay the fine? What fine? I refuse to pay. It's my house. I'll put up whatever I want. Arthur sneered. Can she really kick me out? I already asked around. The association can only send warning letters. I'm flying to New York for a meeting tomorrow. By the time I'm back, this will all blow over. I picked up the empty basket and walked to the sofa. You'd better take a good look at the notices in your mailbox. Enough. Don't talk down to me like that. Where are you hiding with the kid in some rundown rental? Come begging for money anytime you run out. Arthur hung up directly. I tossed my phone onto the sofa. Opening my laptop, I logged into a mail forwarding service page of the U.S. Postal Service. Before moving out, I had set up mail forwarding. Letters addressed to me would be sent to my new address, while bills and letters with Arthur's name would remain in the mailbox at the house. The key to that mailbox was tucked away in the deepest part of the entryway drawer. Arthur never checked the mailbox. He thought all paper mail was junk advertising. Before, every afternoon at 4 o'clock sharp, I would take the key, open the mailbox, sort all the bills, and pay them on time. Now, that brass mailbox was likely overflowing. I clicked open my bank account interface. My family trust fund had just stopped funding the house's linked account yesterday. Next Monday, the mortgage company would send out the first overdue notice. Next Wednesday, the hefty quarterly California property tax bill would arrive right on schedule. Water bills, electricity bills, pool heating fees, all were queued up in that forgotten mailbox. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the street. The streetlights had come on, and a few cars passed below. Arthur thought that by keeping the house, he was preserving his upper-class dignity. He thought that by getting rid of me, he could live a carefree life with Chloe. I walked up to the mirror and looked at my reflection. My hair was casually tied back, and I wore loose cotton pajamas. No jewelry adorned my wrists. I had been sleeping soundly these past few days. A faint cry came from the crib. I quickly dried my hands and hurried to the bedside. The baby was awake, waving her tiny fists. I picked her up and gently patted her back. She rested her head on my shoulder and slowly quieted down. Arthur's company had just launched this year's flagship product. He was in the midst of a career ascent, frequently hosting partners and investors at home. Next month, as per tradition, he was to hold an autumn business dinner at the house. In previous years, I would have contacted a trusted Michelin chef a month in advance, reserved airship seafood, and personally arranged all the table centerpieces. I would have prepared suitable conversation topics for each partner's wife to ensure a harmonious atmosphere. Chloe understood none of this. She couldn't even recognize the names of most investors. I paced around the room with the baby in my arms. She closed her eyes, her breathing steadying. I laid her back in the crib and tucked the blanket around her. My phone screen lit up again. This time it was a new email. The sender was the administrative director of Arthur's company, someone I had placed there myself. The email contained only a brief sentence. Mr. Arthur just instructed the company finance department to transfer next month's dinner budget into his personal account. He's handing full control to Chloe. I looked at the screen and nodded slightly. Arthur was digging his own holes, convinced he could handle everything. He was entrusting the most critical networking event to Chloe. He was handing his most important chips to a woman who only knew how to buy pink flamingos. This was indeed good news. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of warm water. I needed to wake up early tomorrow, so a good night's sleep was essential. I turned off the living room lights and entered the bedroom. In the darkness, only the streetlight outside filtered in, casting a glow on the white walls. This was just the beginning. The wall clock struck 7 in the evening. I stood at the kitchen sink, washing the baby bottles from last night. Warm water flowed over my fingers, rinsing away the white foam at the bottom. I took out a clean cotton cloth and carefully wiped the droplets from the glass bottles. My phone vibrated 3 times in a row on the dining table. The screen lit up, showing 3 photos sent by Sarah, the administrative director at Arthur's company. I placed the bottles on the drying rack, dried my hands, and walked over to the table to open the photos. The first photo showed the dining room at Arthur's house. A long redwood table was covered with a white tablecloth bearing obvious creases. In the center stood 3 cheap glass jars, each holding a few pink carnations with yellowed, withered edges. The second photo was a close-up of the tableware. The plates were rimmed with a garish gold border. Zooming in, the reflective sheen of disposable plastic was clearly visible at the bottom. The third photo featured Chloe standing beside the table. She wore a tight, low-back red dress, a brand-new black Chanel bag hanging from her shoulder. The bag's metal clasp gleamed under the dining room chandelier. Sarah followed up with a text message. The catering truck was a rusty second-hand van. Chloe used the company dinner budget you left behind to buy that bag for herself. The retail price of the bag was exactly $9,000. The total budget for the dinner was only $10,000. I tapped a reply on the screen. Keep the payment receipt screenshot from that outsourced catering company. I walked to the refrigerator, took out an apple, cut it into small pieces, and placed them in the juicer. The machine emitted a loud hum. The second hand on the wall clock moved halfway around. My phone vibrated again. This time, Sarah sent a video. The footage was shaky. Arthur stood at the entrance, forcefully pulling open the door. Investor Mr. Sterling and his wife ascended the steps. Mr. Sterling wore a tailored navy suit with a silver tie. Arthur extended both hands, but Mr. Sterling only offered one for a brief handshake. Mrs. Sterling turned her head, looking at the 2 pink plastic flamingos on the lawn. She frowned deeply, covered her nose with a handkerchief, and hurried inside. The scene shifted to the dining room. Chloe emerged carrying a red plastic tray with several cupcakes. Arthur picked up a bottle of red wine and twisted off the plastic screw cap with effort. Mr. Sterling stared at the cap, the muscles in his face twitching violently. I poured a glass of juice and took a large sip. The tartness of the apples spread in my mouth. I set the glass down on the table. The wall clock pointed to 8:15 in the evening.
My phone suddenly rang.
Sarah was calling. I pressed the speakerphone button. The phone line was filled with chaos. The heavy thud of a wooden chair hitting the floor. The shattering of glass. Eleanor. Sarah's voice was loud, and she was gasping for breath. Mrs. Sterling has collapsed. She took a bite of that fried shrimp ball. The batter had crushed peanuts in it. Arthur's harsh roar came through the background of the call. Where did you find this street vendor? The menu said to avoid all nuts. Can't you even read? Chloe's sharp voice followed immediately. Why are you yelling at me? That credit card you gave me wouldn't even work at a decent restaurant. The entire balance was taken by the bank for the house penalty. I had to order from a fast food place on the corner. How dare you blame me? Call an ambulance.
Now.
Mr. Sterling shouted in the background, his voice choked with tears. Sarah lowered her voice, speaking to me. The ambulance is here. The paramedics are lifting Mrs. Sterling onto a stretcher. They're taking her to the emergency department at Downtown Memorial Hospital. I pressed the red end call button. I walked into the bedroom and pulled open the bottom drawer of the nightstand. I took out a blue folder. Inside were over 30 pages. These were all the important clients' medical records, dietary restrictions, and family doctor contact information I had compiled over the past 3 years. I pulled out Mrs. Sterling's page, folded it twice, and put it in my coat pocket. I picked up the sleeping baby and placed her in the infant carrier, covering her with a thick wool blanket. I picked up the carrier and locked the apartment door. A light drizzle drifted down on the night road. I gripped the steering wheel and turned on the windshield wipers. The wipers scraped across the glass with a rhythmic sound. The headlights illuminated the road signs ahead. The car moved along the road. I parked in the open lot outside the hospital's emergency building. The automatic glass doors of the emergency room slid open to either side. The pungent smell of disinfectant hit me. In the corner of the lobby, on a blue plastic bench, Arthur sat with his hands gripping his hair, his head buried between his knees. His tie had been pulled off and lay on the floor. A large, dark red wine stain marked the front of his white shirt. Chloe stood beside him. She clutched her black Chanel bag tightly. Her mascara was completely smudged, leaving 2 dirty black streaks under her eyes. She looked down, biting her nails. The double metal doors of the resuscitation room swung open. Mr. Sterling strode out. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled his shirt sleeves up to his elbows. He walked straight up to Arthur. Arthur immediately looked up and stood. Mr. Sterling raised his right hand, pointing forcefully at Arthur's nose. My wife almost stopped breathing. You couldn't even do the most basic menu confirmation? Eleanor always confirmed all allergens with our family doctor 2 weeks in advance. Arthur took a step back. His hands fluttered in the air for a moment. Mr. Sterling, this was completely an accident. I gave the budget to Chloe. I thought she would check the ingredient list. You thought? Mr. Sterling's voice suddenly rose sharply. 2 nurses in the lobby turned to look. I entrusted you with a $20 million project budget, and now you can't even manage the budget for a single meal properly. And you expect me to keep signing off on your new projects? Arthur's mouth hung open, no sound coming from his throat. He stared blankly at Mr. Sterling. I pushed the stroller, slowly walking over to them. The wheels made a soft rolling sound on the tiled floor. Mr. Sterling turned and saw me. His expression froze for a moment. I took the paper from my pocket and handed it to Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, this is your wife's complete allergy history report. It also has the on-call number for her primary doctor in New York tonight. Please give this to the emergency doctor immediately. They need precise medication reaction records to adjust the dosage. Mr. Sterling took the paper with both hands. He glanced down at it and nodded firmly. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you so much. Clutching the paper, he turned and ran back into the resuscitation room. The emergency lobby fell quiet again. Arthur stared fixedly at me. His chest heaved violently. He turned his head to look at Chloe beside him. Chloe shrank back, holding the Chanel bag in front of her chest. Arthur suddenly lifted his right foot and kicked the nearby metal trash can with great force. The can toppled over with a loud clang. Several empty paper cups and bloodied cotton swabs rolled out, scattering across the floor. 2 large security guards immediately walked over from the front desk, each taking one of Arthur's shoulders. "Sir, please keep quiet, or we will have to escort you out of the building," the guard on the left warned sternly. Arthur violently shook off the guard's hands. He pointed at me, his lips trembling uncontrollably, but not a single word came out. I didn't look at him. I bent down to adjust the blanket in the stroller. The baby was sleeping soundly, her breathing very steady. I straightened up, pushed the stroller, and turned toward the exit of the emergency hall. The automatic doors slid open again, and the cold wind outside, mixed with rain, blew against my face. I took out my phone and sent a message to my lawyer. Arthur's company's largest investor decided to pull out tonight. His company's valuation will plummet when the market opens on Monday. Prepare the documents immediately and cash out all my shares. I put my phone back in my pocket and walked to the car. I opened the door, lifted the stroller into the back seat, and fastened the seatbelt. I got into the driver's seat, started the engine, and the headlights illuminated the speed bump ahead. I pressed the accelerator, and the car smoothly drove out of the hospital. Monday morning, 7 o'clock. Sunlight streamed across the light wooden floor of the kitchen. I poured a small cup of oats into a white ceramic bowl, added warm water, and slowly stirred with a wooden spoon. The baby sat in a white high chair, clutching a yellow plastic giraffe teether, biting down hard on it. My phone lay flat on the dining table, its screen lighting up. There was a new message. It was from my lawyer. All share transfer documents have been signed. The funds have been fully transferred to your personal trust account. Tax filings are also complete. I took out a wet wipe and dabbed the drool from the corner of the baby's mouth. The phone vibrated twice in quick succession. Sarah, the administrative director of Arthur's company, sent 2 voice messages. I tapped on the first one. "Eleanor, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Arthur just walked into the building. He hasn't even changed his clothes. His suit jacket is wrinkled, his tie is crooked, and there's a coffee stain on it that hasn't been washed out. His eyes are bloodshot." I tapped on the second one. He carried a cardboard box into the conference room, filled with all the trophies he won in the past. He's trying to play the emotional card in front of the board. I fed the baby spoonfuls of oatmeal porridge. The baby ate happily, little feet swinging beneath the chair. I put on my Bluetooth earpiece and typed a reply to Sarah. "Place your phone behind the potted plant in the corner of the conference room and keep the call connected." Sarah sent back an okay gesture. A minute later, background noise from the conference room came through the earpiece. The sound of heavy leather chairs being pulled out, papers rustling, someone tapping a pen on the table. "Board members," Arthur's voice rang out. His voice was hoarse and loud, as if feigning confidence. Mr. Sterling's withdrawal of funds was entirely unexpected. "I've already contacted new investment institutions. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll present a brand new business plan. The company's current crisis will be resolved soon." I placed the empty bowl in the sink and turned on the faucet. Water rushed over the bottom of the bowl. The conference room fell silent. No one responded to him. David, the board chairman, tapped the table. "Arthur, the finance department just verified the bill for last Friday's dinner. The total budget for the dinner was $10,000. The fast food catering company you hired charged $1,000. Where did the remaining $9,000 go?" Arthur stammered. "David, that was used to purchase dinner souvenirs and a few bottles of premium wine. The receipts were lost, but I'll find a way to reimburse the finance department." "You're lying." A sharp female voice suddenly cut through the earpiece. I turned off the faucet and dried my hands with a towel. It was Chloe's voice. "Madam, please leave. This is a closed-door meeting." David's voice turned stern. "I'm not leaving." The sound of Chloe's high heels clicked sharply against the floor. She slammed something heavy onto the solid wood conference table with a dull thud. From the sound, it was likely the brand new black Chanel bag. Arthur, you froze my credit card yesterday. I went to the mall this morning to return this bag, and the boutique said the anti-counterfeit tag was torn off and refused to take it back. Chloe shouted, her voice echoing in the large conference room. Tell your finance department to transfer the $9,000 to me right now. You promised me the leftover money from the dinner was mine to use. The entire conference room fell deathly silent. Chloe, shut up.
Get out.
Arthur's voice trembled. He yanked his chair back, his shoes scraping harshly against the floor as he grabbed Chloe's arm. You dare touch me? Chloe raised her voice, shaking him off forcefully. Who do you think you are, pretending to be some big shot? You can't even buy flowers without cheaping out on discounted $10 red roses from the gas station. The bouquet you brought home had blackened petals. You liar. You said you had millions in your account, and now you're nickel-and-diming me over a bag. Those red roses with blackened edges. Arthur never changed his habit of cutting corners. He thought he could fool everyone. David spoke coldly. Security, escort this woman out. After a flurry of chaotic footsteps, Chloe was dragged away. Her curses could still be heard from down the hallway. The conference room fell silent again. David's voice remained completely flat.
Arthur.
Misappropriation of company assets. Falsified accounts. Caused the company to lose its largest investor. According to Article 3 of the company bylaws, the board now initiates a vote of impeachment against you. David, let me explain. That woman is insane. She's talking nonsense. I can repay the money. Arthur paced back and forth in the conference room, his footsteps frantic. Show of hands. David ignored him entirely. All in favor of removing Arthur from his position as CEO, please raise your hands. A rustling sound of fabric came through the headphones. Unanimous. David announced, Arthur, security is right outside. You have 10 minutes to clear your desk. Hand over your access card and the company car keys. Arthur was breathing heavily. You can't do this. Eleanor and I own half the company's shares. You absolutely do not have the authority to fire me. David threw a thick document onto the table. The sound of sliding paper was crystal clear. Ms. Eleanor cashed out and transferred all her shares to the board this morning. We now hold a 70% controlling stake in the company. Your pathetic little shareholding carries no weight. Asterisk thud. Asterisk the cardboard box full of trophies Arthur had brought with him fell to the floor. Metal trophies clattered against the floorboards, creating a chaotic noise. No more of Arthur's voice came through the headphones. I took off the Bluetooth earbuds and tossed them onto the dining table. I put on a light jacket. I lifted the baby into the blue stroller and took her downstairs for a walk. There was a small park below the apartment building. The sunlight was lovely. A few gray pigeons were wandering on the grass. My phone rang in my pocket. Arthur's name flashed on the screen. I walked over to a park bench, pressed the answer button, and sat down on the wooden slats. Eleanor. Arthur's voice sounded hollow, like a deflated ball. Why did you sell the shares? Because they'll soon drop below the offering price. I watched a pigeon in front of me pecking at grass seeds. Buy them back. Please. Arthur drew a sharp breath on the other end of the line. I was just escorted out of the building by security. My car keys were taken. I'm standing alone on the sidewalk right now. Chloe took that bag and ran off in a taxi. I have nothing left. Good. I switched the phone to my other hand. You'll be able to sleep well from now on. Eleanor, I still have the last 20% of the shares. I can use them as collateral for a bank loan. If you just help me plead with David, I can make a comeback. He was slapping something forcefully. Go ahead and try. I pulled the stroller's sunshade down a little to block the sun from the baby's face. However, the house under your name was sealed by the California tax authorities this morning. All your accounts will be frozen tomorrow. You should buy a cheap sleeping bag tonight. The loud blare of a car horn came through the phone. Arthur said nothing at all. Only the sound of his teeth chattering could be heard. I directly pressed the red end call button. I opened my contacts and dragged Arthur's number into the block list. I pushed the stroller, walking slowly along the park's stone path. The breeze against my face felt refreshing. There was a flower shop on the corner ahead. I pushed the door open, went in, and bought myself a bouquet of very fresh sunflowers. The yellow petals were flawless in the sunlight. I placed the flowers in the storage basket under the stroller and slowly pushed it home. 2 in the afternoon. The baby was playing with building blocks on the living room rug. I sat in the armchair beside her, phone in hand. An anonymous account sent me a link. I clicked on it. The screen jumped to a live stream. Chloe was sitting in a corner of a downtown cafe. She had propped her phone on the table. Centered in the frame was that black Chanel bag. Next to it sat a glass of iced latte. Chloe took out a tissue and dabbed the corner of her eye. Her voice sounded utterly pitiful. "Everyone, please help me. I was swindled out of all my savings by a malicious boss. He bragged about having millions in his account and forced me to quit my job. Now he's bankrupt and left me alone on the street. I don't even have money for food. All I have left is this bag." Comments in the lower left corner of the screen were scrolling rapidly. Colorful virtual gift effects kept popping up. I picked up my glass and took a sip of water. At that moment, the doorbell of the live stream rang. Arthur walked into view. He was wearing the same wrinkled shirt from yesterday, his hair greasy and plastered to his scalp. Without glancing at the menu, he headed straight for Chloe's table.
Chloe flinched backward instantly, reaching for her Chanel bag.
But Arthur was faster. He grabbed the bag's metal chain. "Let go," Arthur shouted at the camera. "I need money for a motel tonight. I can't afford the room. This bag came out of my company's dinner budget, and I'm returning it." The phone was knocked slightly askew, leaning against a white sugar jar, the lens now perfectly framing both their faces. Chloe clutched the leather body of the bag tightly, screaming, "Get away from me. You owe me. You used my social security number to take out a high-interest loan. Consider this the interest." Arthur yanked hard on the chain. "Shut up. You sold the Rolex from my drawer behind my back and replaced it with a fake. Give me the bag." They tugged fiercely from opposite sides of the table. The glass of iced latte toppled over, brown coffee spilling across the tabletop and dripping onto Chloe's red dress. The number of viewers in the live stream doubled. The comments section flooded with question marks. Arthur pointed his left index finger at Chloe's nose. "You ruined my business dinner. You got me fired from the board. All you ever wanted was my money." Chloe let out a piercing laugh. She shouted into the phone camera, "What money? You're a complete fraud. You couldn't even scrape together enough for flowers. Those red roses you brought home for Eleanor that day were a $10 discounted bunch from a gas station. The petals were already black, and you still pretended to be sentimental. You thought you could fool Eleanor. You thought you could fool me." Arthur's face flushed deep red, veins bulging in his neck. Those cheap gas station roses had been the last shred of dignity holding his facade together. Now, Chloe had torn that final veil to pieces in front of tens of thousands of viewers. "Shut your mouth right now." Arthur gripped the metal chain with both hands, stumbling backward with all his might. Chloe extended her long nails and scratched fiercely at the back of Arthur's hand. He cried out in pain, but didn't loosen his grip. A dull crack echoed. The side leather of the Chanel bag split completely, and the metal chain snapped in two. Arthur stumbled backward from the momentum, crashing heavily into a small round table behind him. A tray full of cakes flew off the table, sending white cream and porcelain shards scattering across the floor. Chloe stood frozen, holding the tattered half of the bag. A man in a black apron rushed over with a broom, the cafe owner. Pointing the broom at the door, the owner roared, "Get out. Both of you get out now." Arthur scrambled up from the floor, ignoring the owner entirely. He lunged at Chloe again, grabbing for the broken half of the bag. The two wrestled their way toward the entrance. The owner swung the broom, forcefully herding them out. The glass door slammed shut behind them. Through the cafe window, the phone camera captured the scene outside. They stood on the sidewalk, still grappling. The bag had completely fallen apart. Lipstick, powder compact, a credit card, and a few coins dropped into a puddle near the sewer drain. Arthur crouched down, reaching for the credit card. Chloe took off her high heel and slammed it hard against his back. I tapped the phone screen with my finger and exited the live stream. Placing the phone on the coffee table, I stood up and walked to the edge of the carpet. The baby was holding a red triangular block, trying to place it on top of a square one. I knelt down and steadied the square for her. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the red block. The color was vivid and bright. I walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and took out a box of fresh strawberries. At the sink, I rinsed them under the running tap. The water washed over the bright red fruit. Tonight, I'll make a strawberry smoothie. My mind is completely at peace. All the trash has been sorted and thrown into the appropriate bins. In the mediation room at the Los Angeles courthouse, the hum of the air conditioner droned incessantly. The floor was pale gray, marked with signs of wear. I sat on one side of the long table, 2 folders in front of me. Arthur's temporary custody application. The door opened. The mediator, a gray-haired woman with round glasses, walked in carrying a thick stack of documents. She took a seat across the table. 3 minutes later, Arthur pushed the door open and walked in. He was wearing a gray sweatshirt with a yellowed collar. It had originally been black but was now faded from washing, with obvious stains. His hair was sticking up in disarray, and his chin was covered in stubble. As he entered the room, the sound of him dragging the chair was particularly grating. He tossed a small handwritten notebook onto the table. "Eleanor, I demand to have the child every Wednesday and Saturday," Arthur began. His voice was hoarse, making him sound 10 years older than he actually was. "This is the schedule I've prepared. I'll take her to the park and buy her the best toys." I didn't say a word. Instead, I opened a folder and slid one of the printed pages toward the mediator. It was a detailed record of the baby's feeding schedule, meticulously documenting the exact amount of formula consumed each day, the times of diaper changes, and notes about her allergy to certain fabric materials. The mediator adjusted her glasses, glanced at the data on the paper, and gave a slight nod. She turned to Arthur and asked in a calm tone, "Mr. Arthur, since the baby is still exclusively formula-fed, which brand of formula do you plan to use during your Wednesday visits? Additionally, the child is currently teething. If a fluoride-containing teether is accidentally used, it could cause adverse reactions. How do you plan to handle that?" Arthur froze. He stared at the folder filled with dense data, his mouth slightly agape. He grabbed the small handwritten notebook from the table and flipped through a few pages haphazardly. "Formula just whatever they sell at the supermarket. As for teethers, I'll buy a soft one. They're all the same anyway." The mediator's pen paused on the paper. She asked again, "Who is the child's pediatrician? If she suddenly develops a high fever, do you know the location of the nearest 24-hour emergency center in the community?" Arthur's face flushed a deep, angry red. He pushed his chair back slightly, pressing his hands against the table. "Eleanor has always handled these things. Now she's taken the child away and deliberately kept this information from me. She's setting me up." He turned and pointed at me, his finger trembling uncontrollably. "Look at her. She's smiling right now. She just wants the court to think I'm incapable of taking care of the child." I sat in my chair without moving. I looked at his finger. His nails were caked with black grime. He couldn't even maintain basic personal hygiene. "Mr. Arthur," the mediator's voice turned cold. "As a mediator, I can only speak based on facts. May I ask where you currently reside?" Arthur stammered, unable to answer. The mediator glanced at the materials I had handed over, a report of forced eviction from a motel. She placed the documents back on the table, her tone polite but distant. "Mr. Arthur, given your current living conditions and unfamiliarity with the child's basic needs, the court cannot support your custody application. Unless you can provide proof of stable housing, stable income, and pass a parenting training test within 6 months. Arthur suddenly stood up, leaning his hands on the table. "You're all ganging up against me. I'm her father. I have rights." He turned to look at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, frantic intensity. "Eleanor, you vicious woman. Do you think kicking me out will let you live a good life? Don't forget, you came from that house too. Your designer clothes, your jewelry, which of those didn't I buy for you?" He cursed as he walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he turned abruptly and threw the small notebook, filled with messy schedules, at me. The notebook hit my shoulder and slid to the floor. I looked down at it. The cover was torn, and on the back was written a phone number, the same number belonging to the fake agent who had once swindled Chloe out of her bag money. I didn't look into his eyes. I even felt that he now seemed like a stranger, like a homeless person you might see on the street, arguing with someone over a few dollars. I stood up and straightened my coat. The door to the mediation room closed. I walked to the end of the corridor and pushed open the building's main door. The sunlight outside was a bit harsh. The baby was sitting in her stroller, curiously looking up at the sky. I pushed the stroller toward the parking lot. Arthur was standing across the street, shaking his fist at a passing bus, still cursing under his breath. Passers-by glanced at him, but didn't linger. He had become nothing more than a forgotten passerby in the world. I placed the baby into the car seat and buckled her in. Starting the engine, the car smoothly pulled into the lane. Arthur's figure rapidly shrank in the rearview mirror, eventually becoming a blurry black. I turned the steering wheel and drove toward home. There was no need to look back. All accounts had been settled, all dependencies severed. The red roses with black edges, once bought at a gas station, have completely withered. I watched the scenery along the road as streetlights flicker on one by one. Life has returned to that steady, grounded state where no explanations are needed for anyone. I pressed down on the accelerator, and outside the car window, the city lights gradually illuminate. I'm home,